We have a quorum. We need only a small quorum, so we now have a quorum. I hope that members can stay in this room, and we have invited two professors, one Professor Lam Kin Chi and Professor Chan Ying Kang, to brief us on air, noise and light pollution, and that's noise pollution, and it's really an eye-opening experience. It will help us understand better the issue. So I'll invite the administration and the two professors in, and whilst waiting for them to be seated, I need to apologize. So welcome. Two professors, please be seated on my left-hand side. So let me welcome representatives and guests attending the meeting today. We have two members from the academics, that's Professor Lam Kin Chi, Department of Geography and Resource Management from the Chinese University of Hong Kong, and the other professor also from Chinese University of Hong Kong, Professor Chan Ying Kang, Department of Sociology. And also we see familiar faces, Undersecretary for the Environment, Ms. Christine Law, and Mr. Morris Young, Principal Environmental Protection Officer, Assessment and Noise, and also Mr. Louis Chan, Principal Environmental Protection Officer, Regional Assessment, also from EPD. I'd like to apologize to everyone first. At the House Committee meeting just now, there was a motion on relieving the two members of their duties, and we needed to cast our votes. But at the last minute, the member moving the motion withdrew her motion, so that the no voting was necessary. And originally, it was scheduled for 4:30 or 4 o'clock, but we waited until now, and this meeting is scheduled to end at 6. We'll try to be efficient. I will try to end this meeting at 6:15 without disturbing members' schedules. So I will first invite the two professors to walk us through their studies on noise. Over to you. Sorry, the speaker's not coming through. Well, we are here to discuss the issues relating to noise, and I'd like to explain to members why we've invited the two professors here. First of all, the EPD commissioned the Chinese University of Hong Kong, including the two professors, to conduct a very unique study. The report is now available online, and at the academic level, this report has been released to the sector. However, I don't think the public is having access to the report yet. And this report is very important because noise problems are very serious in Hong Kong and at various levels of the society, including in the Legislative Council. We have received numerous complaints. Legislators have always asked, what is the solution? How should we deal with the problem? This is why the report is very important. It doesn't just let us know the overall picture. And after reading the report, I hope this will stimulate members to think, and I hope that the purpose of setting up this subcommittee can be fulfilled. That is, to take Hong Kong a step ahead in relation to this issue. So this report sets out the vision, but it's difficult to implement. So these two professors have directly participated in the compilation of the report, and I really hope that members could be inspired by the report. And may I remind members that we do not have, we have not attached this report to members. If you want a full version of the report, the Undersecretary already said that this report is now available online. Today we have a PowerPoint presentation on this report. So over to you, the two professors. Please take us through the report. Madam Chair, members, I'm delighted to be invited to brief members on the study conducted by the Chinese University of Hong Kong, commissioned by the EPD. As said by Undersecretary, this report is available online, and I am going to give a brief presentation with the aid of PowerPoint on the report. For the I think to save time, we are going to have a joint presentation. Now, 2 or 3 years ago, the Chinese University of Hong Kong was commissioned by the EPD of Hong Kong to conduct a study called Health Effects of Transportation Noise in Hong Kong. This study is important to Hong Kong. Our counterparts worldwide also feel interested in the study because we are a densely built-up area, and there might be possible cultural differences. And this is the first citywide large-scale study in Asia. We understand that there are 2 or 3 studies in Europe, as I said, and our study group, study team comprised myself and also from the Dutch National Institute of Public Health, and she's also an expert in WHO, and also Mr. Wong, another expert in public health, and Professor Chen Ying-Kang, now next to me, who is in the Department of Sociology and Statistics. There are 3 objectives. The first one is to review the non-auditory health effects, namely annoyance, sleep disturbance, cardiovascular diseases. We want to find out the impact of noise on the health in these areas. And we look at how this applies to the situation in Hong Kong. And thirdly, through a large-scale household survey, we study the annoyance effect due to transportation noise in Hong Kong. And the whole study covered 3 areas. We were responsible for the first and second part. First part is that based on the literature for the past 2 or 3 decades, we had a desktop review of the transportation noise-related health effects according to the information from WHO and European Union. And we also conducted a thematic survey involving over 10,000 households. And pursuant to this study, a citywide noise mapping was also conducted to assess the noise levels in Hong Kong. Now, in relation to health effects, as mentioned just now, we looked at the latest literature on the health effects on annoyance, sleep disturbance, and cardiovascular diseases. We reviewed these cases and we conducted a survey. And in this study, cardiovascular diseases were not covered due to resource constraints and time constraints. As for noise exposure assessment, we focused on road traffic noise only. Now, in relation to the desktop review, I'd like to brief you on our findings. Now, I talked about our review on annoyance, sleep disturbance, and in 1999, the World Health Organization recommended that studies be conducted on some of the health effects, and these two are also included. Annoyance. We understand that we experience discomfort, having a feeling of resentment when there is noise, and I'd like to refer members to the UK Health Protection Agency. For high noise levels, this poses a health issue. As for sleep disturbance, during the desktop review, we found sufficient evidence to suggest that noise does have biological effects. For example, increase in heart rate, arousals, and for severe sleep disturbance incidents, there might be the need to use medication, and sleep might be disturbed. And we do have some evidence to suggest that disturbed sleep causes fatigue, and there are clinical conditions. This is particularly true for a vulnerable group like children, elderly people, etc. And I'd like to talk about Professor Wang Chiwai's visit in January this year. And there was a PowerPoint presentation on diseases. And to quote from him, there is growing evidence that environmental noise is associated with heart diseases. However, the link is complicated by other confounding factors. It's linked to hypertension, but again, it's also influenced by confounding factors. So I'll come to talk about environmental noise. Over the past 2 or 3 decades, there have been clinical studies to suggest a link between noise and health risk, and there are several major European cities, Haina, Ranch, and Ina. These are European countries, and large-scale surveys have been conducted involving thousands of households. And the studies, our study is in line with these 3 studies. And we see that as far as the impact of noise is concerned, we see the base of the triangle. Most people experience discomfort, and then we see clinical conditions, and that can be shown in cardiovascular diseases and sleep disturbance. As for the mechanism, now the clinical studies over the past 2 or 3 decades would link sleep disturbance with physical response and diseases. So moving on to the survey involving 10,000 households. And fortunately, the Census and Statistics Department helped us with the thematic study. Now, for surveys conducted in other countries, they had a wide sample, and that is why we needed to conduct a large-scale survey, and the methodology should be acceptable by the households, and this survey covered more than 10,000 households. The crucial part is how the question should be asked. This is important. About a decade ago, in relation to the question to be asked, an ISO document was released, and we followed ISO 15666 in asking the question. As for setting of the scale, it's a 10-point scale, and how the question should be posed, we also follow that approach. And there was a term called highly annoyed. That is on a scale of 10. For the scores 8 to 10, that would be regarded as highly annoyed.
Under the suggestion of ISO 15666, the suggestion is 0 to 10. So we might have to do some adjustments in point 8 to 10. Now, in some overseas standards, the aim is to find out or ascertain how many households have been highly annoyed and the noise level, and that is reflected in the curves, or the curve reflects the standards to be adopted. Now, in our current study, we have asked the 10,000 households questions on different types of noise, including road traffic noise, rail noise, aircraft noise, other noise sources, their level of annoyance and sleep disturbance. And also we obtained some other personal information from us, including personal habits, whether they switch on air conditioning or open or close windows. I think all these have to do with the survey results. And in the survey, we have been very careful and conducted pilot studies. Because also that some ISO questions are in English, and we have to translate them into Cantonese. And after that has been done, we will again translate that back into English, just so that our results can be compared to those of overseas studies. Now, in the CNSD's survey, we have made follow-up calls to confirm answers on selected questions. I believe that you are keen to find out what the results are. Let's take a look at how noise exposure is estimated in Hong Kong. Well, we've developed a noise mapping technology. Using traffic data, we can estimate the noise level of a building or even the individual floors. Say, I live in opposite the horse racing course. So from this three-dimensional models, and then we'll come up with the modeling results, including 3D results. And this is actually the facade noise from road traffic. And then we can compare these with the results of the survey. Now, in the survey, there are several key questions, including which noise annoys Hong Kong people most. All right, let's look at this table, 5.3, and that is taken out from the large survey report. Let's look at the first column, percentage highly annoyed. Road traffic, 7.9. This means that 7.9 of the respondents feel that they are highly annoyed by road traffic. Well, there is an even higher figure, and that is renovation. While we can all appreciate that renovation in a household often affects the neighbors. 10.8%. On the rightmost column is percentage sleep highly disturbed. (4.15% from road traffic. All right. So how does that translate to how many people are affected? Professor Zhang Yinkang is a statistician. Well, Hong Kong's road traffic standard is 70 dBA, is 28.9%, and using the WHO LDN, 65 dBA, 36.2%. Well, if we translate that into the number of population, we can tell from the table that based on the whole day, those who are highly annoyed, 438,000 people to 504,000 people. There is a range. And those highly sleep disturbed, 222,000 to 269,000 people. So these are the figures that we have projected. So I want to say that this is measuring the facade which is exposed to the maximum noise level, because many flats come with several different sites. Now, if we use the day and night WHO standard is 65 dBA, and in the diagram is in the part in the red rectangular is the part which has exceeded that standard. And that also refers to the most exposed side of the buildings. And different from Europe, similarly, we are using the distance 1 meter away from the windows. But then in Hong Kong study, we found that over 80% of the households have installed air conditioners, and during summertime, they may have their windows closed. All right, the third question is people may be very concerned about how Hong Kong people's response compares with that of others. In overseas studies, including the WHO studies, there is a person called Midima, and he has consolidated the results of many surveys, and he has come up with this curve, which is in blue. Now, for Hong Kong, our line is this one, in red. So obviously, the red curve is below the blue curve. In other words, from the annoyance level or sleep disturbance level, we can tell that Hong Kong people don't have a reaction as strong as those overseas, because our line is below theirs. All right, this is a sleep disturbed curve. Blue line, Midima. Red line, Hong Kong. Our study group has also attempted to compare not only with Midima but other countries in Asia. Do we have similar studies in other parts of Asia? Well, in Hanoi, in Vietnam, there is a similar study. The scale was not as big as ours. In Vietnam, the curve's position is similar to Hong Kong's and is also lower than the curve of Europe. All right. Another issue worthy of our attention in the survey is that other than noise exposure, what other factors or non-auditory factors affect annoyance and sleep disturbance? So in our survey or in our interview questionnaire, we have to complete it within 20 minutes. And there is also a question on this point. I won't go into the detail of the methodology. Let's look at the results. This shows the response to road traffic noise. Now, in the table, there is this odds ratio, looking at the factors affecting people's response. What we are concerned is, first of all, noise, road traffic noise. One is the value 1.077. If the road traffic noise is high, then the annoyance is a little bit above the value of 1, is 1.077. Well, we've double-checked and found that it's correct. We also looked at other factors, and that has nothing to do with road traffic noise. For example, within the household, is there a quiet room, i.e. one which is not facing the road? And we can tell that whether they have an access to a quiet room, 0.469. In other words, if there is one, then their response to noise level, or the noise level, is just half of those which don't have such a quiet room. Satisfaction with neighborhood environment, if they are satisfied, then the rate or the value is 0.548. And compared to those who don't have a good neighborhood environment, then the annoyance level will be eased. Other personal factors, interviews noise sensitivity 1.573. So if this person is sensitive to noise, well, we are doing that through a series of questions, and there is a 50% chance that he would be more annoyed than an ordinary person without such sensitivity. Now, for the sleep disturbance level, the results are on a par, more or less similar. Access to quiet room, satisfaction with neighborhood environment. If they have these conditions, then they would ease the disturbance of their sleep. And also the interviewee's noise sensitivity is also an important factor. I also want to take this opportunity to share our views on the implications of the study findings now that we have these results. And now we have 3 suggestions. One is that if we want to reduce noise exposure, there are 3 methods in general: reducing the number of cars on roads, or reducing road traffic noise. And in the noise path, we may erect noise barriers. And in the building design, thirdly, in the window and building design, is there anything we can do? Well, in Hong Kong, it might not be that easy to cut the number of cars off-road. Even if that is being done, then not many cars can be removed. Now, noise barriers, I think we have erected a lot of them already. Now, if we have done our best on the 2 routes, first 2 routes, and also if we have, we can gain only marginal benefits if we do more or pay extra efforts, shouldn't we be doing more on the 3rd route, i.e. to improve the design of the building to cut down on the noise nuisance? Well, let's look at these pictures in Ma On Shan. Well, the buildings are tall, many noise sources, and the space and the wind will ease the noise level, and we depend on noise barriers to cut down on noise. Of course, we have to see whether we've reached the stage. We have to look or examine other alternatives. Now, let's turn to another diagram if cars have to be removed. Now, if we have to reduce noise by 3 dB. Traffic flow has to be cut by half. Now, if we have to remove half of the cars, only 3 dB can be cut, while the blue arrow, and then if you cut that by another half, and then 6 dB, then you have to cut another number of cars by half. And then even if you make further reductions, there are still many cars running on the road. So last week we held a symposium. People from the building industry and other professions have gathered together to see what can be done in building designs, whether there are windows which can cut noise and at the same time allow air ventilation.
The other point is that from our local study, we find that our curve in Hong Kong is less steep than the Medina's curve. That is, Hong Kong people are not as responsive as foreigners. So let us look at the guidelines in other countries. First, we need to define the percentage of the population being highly annoyed. Let's say if the criterion is 25%, we look at the curve. For example, this yellow curve, if the criterion is set as not more than 25%, then it's 65. And you can set it at 30 or 20 or 15. This is in fact a political decision whether to set the common rule, the criterion at 25 or otherwise. So what does it say about the study in Hong Kong? Let us compare the curve in Hong Kong with the curve in Europe. For this line, horizontal line from X to Y, if you are to reduce the noise level, you can reach a different result in European countries. If this is to reduce to point Y, then the percentage of those highly annoyed will be reduced by as much as this part in B. Whereas for Hong Kong, it's just a small part that's indicated in A. So the same measure will have different effect in different places. So what about the interior of buildings? If there is a quiet room inside a flat, will that be able to relieve the annoyance? This is an important finding, and this finding is also in other overseas studies as well. So the access to a quiet room can moderate annoyance, and we also need to look at the neighborhood environment. And I'd like to say something about the neighboring or neighborhood environment. In Hong Kong, when we look at noise levels, we look at the noise level being experienced by people inside the dwellings. So on the vertical wall, if you want to reduce noise, it's difficult. However, you see that in this picture there is a neighborhood. This is where I live. There is a podium, and the podium is less noise sensitive to traffic noise. So if we can create a good neighborhood environment to moderate annoyance, we can then think about doing more to create a good sound environment. And in the community, apart from your neighborhood, you can also consider what can be done to the community as a whole. to moderate the annoyance generated by high level of noise in dwellings. And over the decade or so, we've seen an important development. Of course, noise is unwanted sound, but sound itself is good. We see people buying CDs, buying headphones, so as to listen to sound. Just like bacteria, some are good, some are bad. So we want to have more wanted noise, or wanted sound, and we want to eliminate unwanted sound. Just like probiotics is a kind of bacteria, but it's also present in children's drinks. So unwanted noise, we want to eliminate or reduce it as much as possible. But there are wanted sounds, just like bird songs and sound of water. So how can we have wanted sounds in our neighborhood and reduce unwanted sound at the same time? This is a new concept. This is the concept of soundscape design. When we talk about landscape, we talk about what we see, but soundscape is about what we hear. And a good soundscape design can moderate the noise we hear. That is, we put wanted sounds to cover the unwanted sounds. Several years ago, the UK's Department for Environment, Food and Rural Affairs released a report on soundscape concepts, and it's called Approaches to Soundscape Design. We tried many measures, and this report is about including wanted sound in the urban design. And I'd like to make another point. This is a chart for comparing different undesirable elements to our health risks. Of course, PM10 or PM2.5, it has a huge impact. Noise, relatively speaking, has a much more smaller impact. But I want to emphasize that, for example, during different periods of time, for example, between 1980s to the 1920s, we see for PM10 there has been a drop, whereas for noise we are seeing a slight increase. So it's really not an easy task to reduce noise in urban areas. And noise also affects a large population. So I'll conclude my presentation with this chart, and I thank members for your concern on this issue. I hope that in the future we can have more opportunities to exchange views with members on how this issue can be resolved. Thank you, Professor. Professor Chen, anything to supplement? This study is basically taken charge by Professor Lam, and he already briefed the members on the findings of the report, and I'm here to provide technical support. Just now, Professor Lam already talked about the points. He covered all the points, and I agree with all of them. I don't have much to supplement at this moment. Thank you. Under Secretary, you also have a paper, CB-192/1213-01. So at this stage, would you like to brief us on this paper, or would you rather save time for our two professors, since we have invited the two professors here, and we will allow members to exchange views with the two professors first? Yes, this is exactly what I'm thinking. Okay, the floor is open for questions. Who would like to ask questions? Mr. Paul Chair. All right, if no members raise their hands, I won't set a time limit. So, Mr. Tony Chair, thank you. Chair, thank you to professors for coming to our meeting today. Now, just now we talked about the curve in Hong Kong. I think maybe it's because we have been subject to such noise level since we're born, and we become less responsive. In other countries, we might feel more comfortable, and we might not be aware of this. And then when we return to Hong Kong, we again experience discomfort. We might not be able to spell it out, but that's how I feel. Now, in the construction and surveying sector, well, in terms of urban planning, like Professor Lam just said, it's hard to change existing buildings. Now, for transportation, however, a lot of members share my views, and many people would prefer race cars, and their engines are generating very much noise. So can something be done about this? We talk about clean fuels to help improve air quality. What about noise? If less noise is generated, then it would be better. Can this be done from a transportation perspective? The other point is that as far as our dwellings are concerned, we are very apprehensive about renovation works in our adjacent flats. They can become very, very noisy. So we're going to have the mandatory window building inspection schemes, and many buildings in Hong Kong have mosaic tiles on the exterior wall. So I wonder if anything can be done about that. First of all, we don't want to pose a greater pressure on our landfills. So can we talk about the experience abroad? Say if painting, if paint coating is used instead of tiles, would that help? And has any study been conducted for renovation works inside the flat? Well, is there anything to encourage people not to demolish fittings? Because I see that for new buyers, they take down fittings inside the flat even though they're new. So in terms of the latest building design and orientation of buildings, of course this would help. But Professor, the point is our land supply is tight. We have, although we have setback areas and NBAs, and we have tree planting, etc. I wonder if these could work. We have Mr. Kwok Wai Kang and Dr. Elizabeth Kwok waiting to ask questions. So 5 minutes each, please. As for our guests, I won't set a time limit. I just set the time limit for members. Professors, you might be aware that they are subject to a time limit of 5 minutes, but I will allow our guests to finish anyway. Professor Lam. Thank you, member, for your observations. Now, I see three problems here. The first is why Hong Kong people are less responsive, or are Hong Kong people less responsive? We're trying to find out the reasons for the difference between the two curves, and this is what we should ask. This is also a topic of a study. For example, the use of air conditioners, the opening of windows, or whether we have got used to noise levels, such a high noise level over a long period of time. I really cannot answer you on this. Transportation, I fully understand. There are noisy cars, and I think that in environmental control, we need to rely on various aspects. I understand that under the road traffic ordinance, there is also a limit on the noise level from cars. So we can think about enforcement, and for the percentage of those highly annoyed, maybe it's higher than they feel more annoyed by renovation works than road transportation noise.
When a flat is being renovated, all the surrounding flats of that flat will be affected. So how to deal with it? This is not a subject covered by the survey, and I believe that EPD colleagues are very concerned about this, and perhaps they will let us know later how to deal with the problem. And I fully agree that in newly built buildings, then renovation is carried out. And in the past, actually, there is a levy on construction materials, and I think that is good. But then this measure is not totally effective, and I think that more measures need to be formulated, and people should think about whether they should do renovation work before they even move into the flat. Professor Wong, Professor Chen, any supplement from you? Well, I agree with 2 points made by the member. First is about our habits or our getting used to the noise around us. I fully agree with that. Actually, I left Hong Kong for several years. When I first returned to Hong Kong, I found that the Cantonese language is a very strange language. Was it because the overseas language that I used in those years was too modest and gentle? And actually, we get used to the noise level. Say, our babies in Hong Kong, they grow up in a noisy environment. So that also echoes the study that I have undertaken in the past. And that has to do with the population density in Hong Kong as well. Hong Kong has dense population. That has not led to any mental or physical diseases. Well, people are not afraid of overcrowdedness, and we can explain that with the fact that people have got accustomed to the environment. Now, people are not like mice or guinea pigs. There have also been studies that people killed people and chopped people, and that has to do with overcrowdedness. So that is not the case, I think, too. In Xinjiang, say, you wouldn't be able to find people to chop if you want to chop up people. So the annoyance because of noise has to do with cultural factors as well. But that doesn't mean that we should not pay any serious efforts in reducing noise pollution. We might be able to put up with it, our generation, but that doesn't mean that the next generation can bear with it. We can do a better job, definitely, and we should all work hard together. I find it strange that no interviewees said that they can't put all the noise of, say, mahjong games and TV and so on, but say in a very congested public housing estate, residents may be affected by noise from mahjong and so on. Mr. Kwok Wai Kang, Madam Chair, thank you very much. Our tolerance level towards noise, does it have to do with the fact that we are accustomed to the very crowded situation in Hong Kong? Well, I would like to ask the two professors whether you have information on whether it has to do with the people's mental conditions. Do nervous people react more strongly to noise nuisance? Now, obviously, from our perspective, Hong Kong people have long working hours and they don't take a good rest, and there is no buffer zone. Now, usually, there is a buffer period after work before one goes to sleep. But then in the city dwellers, they go back, they return home after work, and then the slightest sound would be able to wake them up in the middle of a sleep. So is people's mental conditions a factor? Actually, the number of people who feel that they are annoyed is increasing. Now, that goes against the thinking that people will get accustomed to the noise level. I would also like to ask about road traffic noise. The administration, the EPD, when they measure noise level, they measure it over a long period of time. But then, at the district level, we've received complaints from residents telling us that the noise level is, the high noise level is not sort of on a continuous basis. When a vehicle passes, and it will make a sudden, creates a sudden pounding or banging noise. And the EPD told us that that sort of noise can't be measured and is below the allowed limit. Is this what is really happening? And what is the impact of that sound, sporadic sound or noise? Now, another question is, when a person is sleeping, what is the noise level that will wake him up? Do you have information? I will briefly respond about mental conditions. In our survey or questionnaire, we have asked several questions on people's sensitivity to noise levels or noise sensitivity. In the table just now, we see that interviewees' noise sensitivity has an important part to play in whether they are annoyed or have their sleep disturbed. Now, in our survey, we have also looked at the number of years that the interviewee has lived in that district, and we couldn't find any relationship on that point. So in other words, no matter how long he has lived in that district, that doesn't have anything to do with his annoyance level. Thirdly, if we measure the noise level over a continuous period, i.e. we are now using the value of L10 per hour, and that wouldn't be able to reflect a noise event, i.e. sporadic noises created by heavy vehicles. And actually, a lot of surveys have shown that people as annoyance level has to do with the occurrence or incidence of noise events. Now, lastly, sleep, disturbance of sleep, and that has to do with the noise level. Now, as for what kind of noise level will awake people, then that differs from person to person. And of course, the higher the noise level, the more the person will be disturbed in his sleep, and the heartbeat will also go up. And Mr. Wei Kang, you might be interested in following up on this. We have been measuring the noise level, the average noise level over a continuous period of 1 hour. Now, if we say in the middle of the night we are sound asleep, and then there is this heavy vehicle passing by, creating a sudden banging sound, then you will be awakened. But then when we measure the noise level, we do it on a continuous level over a 1 hour period, so that banging sound may not be included. So, Professor, can you tell us that, whether that banging, sudden pounding sound can be measured in the present way of measuring noise level? Well, in many countries and in Hong Kong, we use this level 10 per hour noise level. It is seldom that countries use the incidence of noise events in the measuring of noise level. Perhaps the EPD can supplement, Mr. Young. Thank you, Madam Chair. In Hong Kong, we use this L10 measurement, and then if in a 1 hour the noise limit exceeds 10 dBA, well, the 10% of an hour exceeds that, then that is not acceptable. In other countries, they are doing measurements at daytime or also night time. I think if this is a very stringent standard, of course, the noise level created by each individual car will be incorporated in that. I think the 10% benchmark is a stringent one, as Professor Lam said. In our neighboring countries and European countries, they are also adopting the same standard, and some are using the average value, some are using L10, and there is no country which use just the noise levels at a certain peak period as the measurement. Well, legislation aside, as what Professor Lam said, if there are noise events, 3 or 4 events within an hour, what is their impact on the annoyance level? Well, let me try to provide this angle of thinking. Now, L10, let me try to use an analogy. Hong Kong's temperature. L10 doesn't mean the average temperature, which means that 10% of the year, say 36 days in a year, exceed a certain temperature. So actually, the 10% reflects the high temperature days. But I can appreciate that when vehicles make sudden banging noises when they pass through, I wonder whether under the existing legislation, whether these sort of incidents can be governed under the legislation. Now, there may be the creation of noise when a vehicle passes a road. Can that be governed under the legislation? Can that be resolved through a technical way? Now, as Mr. Chair said, that some people have remodified or made modification their exhaust pipes and trying to create very noise. Well, thank you, professors, for sharing your survey results. And in community work, we have received a number of complaints. And actually, the complaints against noises fall into several categories: construction noise, noise from renovation of flats, and then road traffic noise. These are again divided into 2 categories: long-standing noise problem because there is a road outside, and then there is another type of complaint on racing cars or sports cars, passing through a road in the middle of the night, and they may be a fleet of say 20 plus cars, and they may sort of pass through your household at 5 or 6 a.m. in the morning. And there is another type of noise. And, well, it's ex-mental patients may be highly sensitive to noise, and they feel all the time that people are creating noise nuisance next door. People hitting things or children's noises at an adjacent flat. And they may complain that those living next door are hitting the wall all the time in the middle of the night, and that may be these kinds of cases are difficult to deal with because the complaints are made on a very or continuous basis. So many households will be affected in the middle of the night. Well, I have several questions on renovation works in an apartment. The renovation works are banned on Sundays, but then it are allowed on Saturday. Should we extend that restriction to Saturday? And also, for some families, the renovation works can take a long time, say a month or two. Can we put in a restriction to put in bricks within a very long renovation period? Now, as for sports cars or racing cars, the road, there are major trunk roads next to public housing estates, and noise barriers have not been put up. And even though we have fought for them for many years, are there any new technologies to reduce noise without the erection of noise barriers?
Car racing, apart from enforcement, law enforcement, can a more stringent approach be taken to combat car alteration. Mr. Tony Chair talks about the alteration of the exhaust pipe of cars. Can we ban that? Other points include urban design. What I want to ask is actually this. Now, if we include the design of, say, aquatic facilities in front of buildings, can that serve to moderate annoyance? Dr. Quat, I think the two professors might not be able to answer all your questions. For example, no renovation work on Saturdays or so on and so forth. I think for noise barriers or other new technologies, unwanted sounds, for example, sounds from water, I think they may be able to answer. I understand that in a very noisy environment, say if you are subject to constant traffic noise, if we build a fountain there, will it become even more noisy? And for renovation works in residential buildings, well, a suspension of 2 weeks so that noise can be reduced. Well, does that help in minimizing the health impact? In Hong Kong, apart from using noise-reducing paving materials and noise barriers, and those materials are actually quite expensive, and the effect will wear off over time. We need to know the constraints, but at the same time, these are necessary. As for water sound, yes, it does help, but I want to add that the sound must be added appropriately. This can help. This is findings of a number of studies, and if the sound from water and birds are added appropriately, then this does have an effect. As for building design, whether more can be done, this is not within the scope of the study with EPD, but I myself have also conducted a study in private housing estates and PRH estates in Hong Kong. As far as noise levels are concerned, well, much to everyone's surprise, the PRH estates actually have a lower noise level than private housing estates, because they have incorporated other sound sources in their design, for example, water sound. So we need to consider what elements to be included in the design. For public housing, space might not be the number one concern. The concern might be to create a good environment, whereas for private housing estate, however, space is a major concern. You want to maximize its use. So that's down to urban design and design of housing estates. But we're just talking about the difference of 2 or 3 decibels. What about suspending the renovation works for a period of time? Will that help? I haven't conducted any study on this area. I think it has to do with enforcement of the legislation. And I think we need to strike a balance. Would you rather suffer more during a short period of time or spend the suffering? I think perhaps you can discuss with the EPD in the future. But the point is, if the suffering is more for a short period of time, that is to say for 4 consecutive weeks, you need to put up with all the noise of demolition, etc. That is whether people's tolerance towards noise will wear off, such that for 4 consecutive weeks the person can no longer tolerate the noise. I mean, does that help moderate annoyance? I do not have this data. Professor Chan, perhaps I can give you some examples. Say for a renovation project of 2 months, they might not be drilling the wall all the time. Some owners' corporations or the management office of buildings might do this. Say they might require the workers to drill the walls only during a certain period of time and not throughout the day. Perhaps they might implement such measures for their management's sake. I don't know whether this can be promoted. That is for noisy works. They can be concentrated at a particular period during the day or particular period. This is just an idea. Perhaps the administration could answer the questions raised by me. Well, Dr. Quat, I think we should do it this way. The administration attends our meeting every time, and today we have invited the 2 professors. I think we should concentrate on putting questions to the 2 professors. Mr. Chan Han Pan, earlier on, I raised 2 examples on how the noise problem can be improved. Now, I read very thoroughly the administration's reply for Rambler Crest. According to the administration's reply, it's a service apartment, and originally the design. I'm sorry, Mr. Chan, sorry to interject. I said just now that the administration attends each and every meeting of ours, but the 2 professors are only attending this meeting. So, can you phrase your question in a way that the 2 professors will be able to answer your question on the 2 examples? Yes, all right. The other example has to do with the noise nuisance at Texaco Road. If the road has to be, or the flyover has to be retrofitted with concrete, with noise barriers, well, it's said that this is not feasible because inadequate supporting strength, because of inadequate supporting strength. But are there any solutions to this problem? For example, noise barriers of lighter weight, because there are residential buildings very close to Texaco Road, and it's impossible for residents not to open the window at any time at all. Professor Lam. Now, for the example in Chengyi, I'm not quite familiar with it. As for Texaco Road, I do drive past that stretch from time to time. I understand the nuisance caused to nearby residents, and I can see that little can be done under those circumstances. I understand that for noise barriers, in summer you have strong winds, so there should be adequate supporting base for its construction. Other measures could be taken, but it might not be too effective. So the question is, in urban planning and design for new development areas, we should consider carefully how planning should be done. And for example, where we have road infrastructure, and if we are to construct residential buildings, we need to consider how noise can be mitigated. Professor Chen, I share the same view as Professor Lam. I think there are long-standing problems. These problems exist before the residential buildings are built, and the responsibilities, therefore, lies with the vendor who sells the flat to you. So I think the way to resolve this issue is to ask who created this problem. We should not just find solutions to the problems. Sometimes it's difficult for us to find out in our studies which exists first. So it's really difficult to answer. In fact, Professor also pointed out one thing, that is, the road existed before the development did. However, the original plan was that the road would be widened, noise barriers would be erected. However, all these measures were withdrawn, and as a result, there hasn't been any improvement at all. All right, understood. The two professors already mentioned that in terms of window design, something could be done to mitigate noise nuisance. And you did bring out one issue, and that is for a window that could be opened on either side, this could mitigate the noise problem. So by how much decibels? Madam Chair, I myself haven't conducted any study in this regard. But regardless of Hong Kong or in other countries, there are such windows. If these windows are installed properly, they can reduce noise by 7 or 8 decibels, and this can moderate annoyance brought about by high levels of noise. But I understand that the theory has been translated to practice, and this can be implemented in Hong Kong. I believe that this will be done in a short period of time. Second round, we have Mr. Kwok Wai Keung. And Mr. Kwok Wai Keung, now I want to ask the question first in relation to the study. I hope the answer will help our deliberation. Now, Professor, you talked about the survey and the study, and you said that over 10,000 households were interviewed. And Professor Lam, you talked about the difference between private housing estates and PRH estates. And unexpectedly, the noise levels at PRH estates were lower than those in private housing estates. So I wonder if you have broken down the household surveys. For example, do some of them live in Sai Kung, so that it's a very quiet area, whereas for some other households, they might be living in Mong Kok or Causeway Bay, the upstairs of shops, etc. And do you have this data? Did you ask the question whether whether the interviewees suffered from any cardiovascular diseases or mental delusions, etc. Thank you, Madam Chair. Noise environment in private housing estate and PRH estate. Now, I'd like to stress that this is not the finding of this report commissioned by the EPD. This is a finding of one of my personal study. And also for this 10,000 plus households in the survey, they are sampled on a random basis.
Well, the respondents come from different areas, including high-rise buildings, small houses in the new entities, and so on. Well, we haven't made a detailed analysis or comparison between noise level between PRH estates and private housing estates. It would not be difficult to make such an analysis as long as we've got the data. Would like to mention that the survey was done with the help of the CNSD, and as far as the data are concerned, the household's privacy is duly upheld, and so for our part, we don't know the personal particulars of the interviewees. Now, as for the cardiovascular diseases, we didn't do anything on that part in our survey, and that's mainly because, number one, limited expenditure. Secondly, we've sought help from the CNSD survey, and they have just allotted 20 minutes to us for our questions. So not many questions can be asked within a 20-minute period. And actually, within the study group, there have been much debates on what questions to ask. So we just focused on the annoyance level and sleep disturbance levels. To my understanding, the CNSD can do cross-tabulations. And we don't need detailed information on which floor they live in, but at least if we can have an idea on whether they live in public or private housing, then that would be good. I want to know information about the number of stories in that building, how noise level affects the residents in these buildings, and how the noise level affects the residents' sleep, their mental conditions, and their health conditions, whether they have diseases developed because of noise nuisance. Can you further communicate with the CNSD to see whether breakdowns like what I mentioned can be provided so that we can have a better idea on the relationship between noise and health? All right, I'll try to follow up the questions you raised and see whether a detailed breakdown can be provided. Deputy Secretary, limited expenditure. You've heard that point, right? Now, the survey has been completed. If we use the data set available and then we would do something more, then it doesn't have only to do with only the resources, but rather many other aspects. It's not appropriate for us to ask the two professors to undertake further work because the survey was completed. Well, let's go back and consider this. Well, to my understanding, CNSD, when they have completed a survey, anybody in the society, as long as they are willing to pay, they can ask for detailed cross-tabulated figures. All right, can I ask that we go back and take a look before we respond? Mr. Kok-Wai Kang. Madam Chair, as what the two professors said about noise events. Well, I just want to make sure that I understand them correctly. Now, when the vehicles pass through the joints of the roads and create noise, and that will affect people's annoyance level and sleep disturbance level. And actually, earlier we've sought help from Mr. Young of EPD to follow up on the Eastern Corridor, on the joints of the roads there. I think all of them have been replaced. Now, Mr. Young mentioned about 10% within a 1 hour period. There is in that 10% that the noise level is not above 70 dBA. So in other words, in a 1 hour period, if there is a 6-minute period which exceeds 70 dBA, then that is problematic. Is that right? So the question is, within that 1 hour period, when the vehicles pass through the road, would they give out a noise level exceeding the limit for 6 minutes? I think that's very difficult to estimate. So what I want to say is that there are different speed limit controls, right? And in the daytime, they can travel at a speed of 80 kilometers to 10 kilometers per hour. Now, at nighttime, vehicles naturally drive at higher speed. Drivers drive at higher speed. Now, at nighttime, the noise will be more prominent because the speed is faster. Can we think about restricting the speed limit during nighttime? Secondly, we've also received views about lion dances and activities, and because of the noise legislation, they are not allowed to practice lion dance even during daytime. So, what are the standards being adopted by the EPD towards these events or activities? It is hard or difficult to ask lion dancers to remain silent when they're practicing. Actually, I participated in an activity where there was lion dancing, and without the drum playing at the same time, they are dancing out of rhythm. So, towards these kind of cultural activities, is it true that EPD, upon receipt of complaints by people, will be very stringent on the noise level created by these activities? And the complainants may be very subjective in their assessment of the noise level, and for fear of angering the complainants, will the EPD be adopting a stringent measure? Well, Mr. Christopher Chung is going to ask a question. I'll try to extend the meeting time. And perhaps I'll ask the EPD to respond to issues which are related to what the two professors have raised. Now, on issues like lion dances, music performances, and so on, cultural activities, how to help the organizers of these activities as far as noise level is concerned? Well, please refrain from asking these questions at this particular meeting. Mr. Young, the sound event and the 10% benchmark. Thank you, Madam Chair. A single noise event, as mentioned by Mr. Kwok. Actually, we've talked to him earlier on about flyover joints, and the sound may last 1 to 10 seconds, and divided over a 1 hour period, the noise level is really low. So that would not exceed the 70 dBA noise level limit. about the line dances, perhaps we can give you a reply in writing later on. Perhaps you can talk to LTSD to ask them to provide more indoor venues for these people to practice. Sorry, Madam Chair, Mr. Yong said that when the vehicles pass through the joints, they emit less than 70 decibel in noise level. And because they just pass through the joints in just 1 to 2 seconds time, yes, it's possible for us to measure the noise level at that particular juncture, but that they have not exceeded the noise level limit. Mr. Kwok, on the examples or the cases you cited, we've asked the Highways Department to do remedial work and to reduce the impact noise. And obviously that has worked. And for other flyovers, the Highways Department is also doing the work. Now, my question is 70 decibels. The same limit also applies during daytime. My question for the professors is this. Now, in the middle of the sleep, and then the noise level jumps from 10 to 20 decibels to 50 or to 60 decibels. Will that annoy people? Well, it's difficult for me to give you a definite answer about what increase will create that effect. When the background noise level is too low, then even if the sudden noise incident doesn't reach a very high noise level, that is going to affect residents. So, well, even if a mosquito is flying around me, I will be awakened. I'm that sort of person. All right, Mr. Christopher Chung. I've been following up on the issue for over a decade. Should the government tighten its legislation? First is the average or the percentage level. Can we do it, say, 5 minutes or 6 minutes as a benchmark? Well, when we talk about noise level, it's difficult to use an average figure. I think we should tighten the legislation. You should measure or take our average over a 5-minute period, and if the noise level exceeds the limit, you should issue a noise notice to noise abatement notice. Now, people may be awakened in the middle of the night by a sudden pounding noise, and then they go back to sleep, and 10 to 20 minutes later, they will be awakened similarly again. So in that kind of situation, it's difficult to resort to an average noise level to tackle the problem. Yes, well, so if a more stringent approach should be adopted in issuing a notice of noise abatement, or our health will be affected seriously. Now, if, say, there are 1 or 2 noise events in one night, then you would not get good sleep, and the average, the noise level wouldn't be able to tackle that sort of problem. So I think we should tighten the legislation. For noise barriers, can you expedite the works? Madam Chair? Well, members are well aware of these problems, and there are so many such problems in every district. So next time, when we discuss the subject, we would discuss whether we should tighten the legislation and what impact it will create, how much it can help resolve the problems, and what sort of measures are effective in what circumstances, say in resurfacing the road, in retrofitting noise barriers, do they really help? And in some cases, should we ban certain vehicles from certain roads? So we should really think hard on what kind of measures are right for what road sections. In what areas should control be stepped up, or in certain areas specially designed windows might be more effective. In other areas, noise barriers work better. And in some cases, it would be better to do something inside the apartment. So these are all the question marks that I have. I think members can all sorts of questions because we are all familiar with these issues. And Professor also talked about what we can do within the flat, and also in urban planning and design, how we can avoid these problems, how we can avoid these problems in our design. So these are overall issues that we should look at. It is not just we should not be just talking about tightening legislation. We should really look at all the measures.
The works be expedited. I mean, those projects in the pipeline for noise barriers to be erected. The administration will reply in writing next time. So, if there are no more questions from members, then thank you, professors, for coming to this meeting. We will stay in contact. I hope in the future we'll once again invite you to provide more information for our benefit. Now, there are other housekeeping matters. The next meeting is scheduled for the 14th of June. And would Mem Clark please tell us something about the upcoming meetings on the 28th? The next meeting was originally scheduled for the 14th of June. As we have not completed the discussion of this agenda item, and that we'd like to discuss the administration's paper next time. So, Madam Chair, are we going to spend 1 hour on the administration paper next time? Because for the remaining hour, the administration would like to hold a special meeting on retrofitting buses with catalytic converters. So, Chairman has agreed that for the latter half of the meeting on the 14th, this will be used for the special meeting. We're talking about 2 meetings. The first hour will be for this subcommittee, and we will discuss the administration's paper. We haven't been able to do so today. For the next hour, of course, I will have to give notice at the panel that 1 hour will be spent on discussing the retrofitting of buses with catalytic converters. And I wonder if 1 hour is enough to discuss the administration paper, which you haven't been able to do so today. Otherwise, the other hour will also be reserved for the subcommittee's meeting. No objection? Under Secretary. So on the 14th, Mr. Young is otherwise engaged. Is it okay to reschedule the meeting? If major government officials are unable to attend the subcommittee's meeting to brief us on the administration's paper, perhaps we should consider vacating the slot on the 14th of June so that the panel on environmental affairs can follow up on a number of issues, air noise and light pollution, and retrofitting buses with catalytic converters, 4 items altogether. So we will vacate the meeting on the slot on the 14th. Thank you.